Hello everyone, welcome to the live stream of the thisquality sponsored live stream of the NZ Outdoors Party. So in tonight's stream we're going to be talking about numerous topics, mainly by Sue Gray and Michael K, sorry. And yeah, but anyways, we're going to get into the stream really quickly by introducing ourselves. So my name is Sam Hudson, and I'm the CEO of thisquality LLC, which means Limited Liability Company, and basically we are sponsoring this stream tonight and making it possible so that the communications are going to be great, and you know, of course with quality, because that's in our name. So I'm going to be managing the stream. I'm going to be reading the comments and basically allowing you guys to talk to Michael K, Sue Gray and Mike Isles if you have any questions and comments, whatnot. And yeah, so I won't I won't move it towards me anyways. I better move it on to Michael K and introduce himself. So introduce yourself.
Yeah, g'day everyone. So I'm Michael K, candidate for Otaki for the New Zealand Outdoors Party. Hoping we've got some viewers from Otaki. Hello Otaki. It was good doing the stream last week, and we had quite a few people having a look. For the first time, this time we're going to just get better each time. So tonight we've got Sue Gray, the co-leader of the New Zealand Outdoors Party, and we'll just introduce yourself.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks, team. I'm honoured to be here tonight supporting this and the great work you're all doing. So I'm Sue Gray. I'm the co-leader of the New Zealand Outdoors Party. I'm the Nelson candidate for the New Zealand Outdoors Party. I'm a lawyer with a background also in science, resource management, risk assessment, and a whole range of different things. So I'm delighted to be here tonight.
Awesome, and we'll move it on to Mike Isles.
Yeah, good evening everybody. My name's Mike Isles. I'm the manager for Michael K's campaign in Otaki. I'm also the membership coordinator for the New Zealand Outdoors Party. We have some topics. I'll let Sue and Mike kick it off with the discussions that we have tonight.
So what we're going to try and do each week, if there is some sort of breaking news, which we do have tonight, and unfortunately it's pretty breaking, something that we can actually do anything about. Which further in the stream we will tell you about things that the Outdoors Party has represented New Zealand on. So would you just like to cover that topic for us, please?
Yeah, look, it's been a really sad day in Parliament today. The government has passed emergency laws further removing our fundamental rights and freedoms under the Bill of Rights Act and all of the other rights that we always thought that we had and that were really secure rights in a country such as New Zealand. But as a result of the COVID response, and I'll say the COVID response, not COVID itself, but the government's response to COVID, as a result of that, we have serially lost rights. Now, there is some good news in the sense that we're about to come out of level 3 lockdown, out of our cages, but bad news is that the government are passing emergency law changes to let them have more powers over us that our current laws don't justify. So it's heartbreaking for me as a lawyer with an interest in human rights and public rights, community rights, to see the complete abusive process in the way this government is passing these laws, and also that the lack of active opposition from the other parties in Parliament. You know, when the Outdoors Party is in government, we will be representing the public. We will be screaming. We will not be going along with these sort of international objectives. We are here for the people of New Zealand, and it really, really is, I find it a tragedy that our current representatives are not representing the New Zealanders. There are things that we can do despite the frustration. I've been doing a lot of work on human rights and democracy, and one of the objectives of the Outdoors Party is empowering the people of New Zealand to take back our power. And we've been talking about this for years, but people have been pretty relaxed. You know, it's been a lovely place. You can go to the beach, you can watch telly, you can do what you like. And it's only when we lose our rights and our power, our freedoms, that we start to realise what's going on here, how fragile our constitution is in New Zealand. So over the last couple of months with the COVID law reform, I've been involved encouraging people to get engaged back in democracy. And we have set up a group, let's create a people's constitution for New Zealand, because what most people don't realise is in New Zealand we don't have any protected rights. All we have are laws that our government can change on a whim, as they're doing in Parliament today. Things that we thought were our long-term rights can be changed just in a day. So we want to get a people's constitution. We want the people of New Zealand to come together to write a constitution about what we think should be fundamental rights that can't be changed under any circumstance. And we've got this Facebook page set up. We're setting up a website to do it as well. We've had a massive community response. Just actually, it's been so overwhelming that we've had to get a whole team of people to help us manage all the people that want to get involved in this. So it's pretty exciting, really, what's all happening there. And just the other thing that, while we're on this topic, is in Nelson, we've been out every single week protesting at the supermarket with our grocery shopping, because we weren't allowed out for any other reason. So we've been wearing protest banners and jackets with slogans on, T-shirts with slogans on, protesting as we go through the supermarket and talking to the crowds while we're waiting outside the supermarket. Now, last weekend was a bit of a change of mood. The public had been really almost brainwashed, intimidated, scared to speak up, just in shock. But we've seen the public getting more confidence back. They've been missing their friends, their normal activities. So they're starting to engage more. So last week we had a group of people that all turned up, and we did what we called some chalking. A new game we invented, What's Your Line, where we asked people to write with chalk on the car park, at what point, what would it take for them to question the government, to stand up and say, hey, we've had enough. This is not your job, government, but out of our lives. Let us get back on with our lives again. So we had this amazing game, lots and lots of people getting involved. And then the police came. And the police tried to tell us that we couldn't communicate with people, we couldn't educate. Luckily, there was quite a reasonable kind of a bloke who was one of the policemen, and I had a really good conversation with him. And for the first time in my life, I got my cell phone working and I live streamed the conversation. So it's gone up to like 17,000 people have been watching that conversation. And we reminded the policemen that actually their job is to uphold the law. Their job is not to restrict human rights. Their job is to uphold human rights, to promote public confidence in the law and in the people in the law. And I reminded him of the police officers in California who had been fronted by the war veteran, and it's a really massive video that hundreds of thousands of people have watched, who stood up to these 2 or 3 lines of armed police officers in California and asked them to think about what side of history they wanted to be on. So I went through that scenario with our policeman. I said, yeah, same question. What side of history do you want to be on? And it was a really, really awesome situation because he listened. And that's all the public want. The public just want people in authority to listen. And he did listen. And then they agreed that actually it was okay. We're entitled to our freedoms. We're entitled to our freedom of expression. And we're entitled to write chalk messages on the pavement. So really, really cool. We're going back next Saturday again, and I'm inviting everybody in New Zealand to get out and express how you feel about the way the government's treating you. Get out, walk, we're calling it walk, talk and chalk. Get out there. You can do it by yourself, you can do it with your friend. Go for a walk to the beach, and along the way write your messages. Get together with a few friends. I think officially we're going to be allowed 10 friends, whatever it is. Share your messages. Let's get people thinking. Let's get people thinking about what kind of place we want New Zealand to be. Because if we don't think about what kind of place we want New Zealand to be, somebody else is going to choose it for us. So it's been a pretty emotional, actually, few days with all these things happening, especially for me as a constitutional lawyer. But there is hope because people power, people are waking up, and we can be, as political faces, we can be the voice of the people of New Zealand. We can give them some ideas about the things that they can do. And it's a really, really exciting place to be at the moment. We're right on balance. is the establishment going to take away all of our rights, or are we going to stand up and are we going to say to the establishment, no, your job is to represent us and your job is to get back and do your job and not interfere with our rights. You should be protecting our rights. So we're right on the edge as we speak, day by day. This balance is changing, and the more the people stand up and get involved, the more powerful it's going to be, the more chance we've got of getting a good outcome instead of a bad outcome. So that's what we did. We weren't going to talk today about all that, but it's something that's just come up today. But it does lead into what we were doing with the APEC submission that Michael's asked me to come and talk about. So I'll let you carry on with that.
All right, well, I think we pass on to Mike. I've got a comment there.
Yeah, can I just add that following this meeting, we will put a link to the proposed new legislation on the websites that this is being displayed on.
Yeah, awesome. Yes.
Yeah. So the other thing to point out to that is what we are trying to do be a little bit of a come to spot where as things are being passed, so with the APEC laws that we're changed, much as what's actually happening now under urgency. I mean, we didn't have COVID-19 back then. We've had a lot of regulations, national policies, and all sorts of things being very poorly advertised by our government, which is government only works, democracy only works when you've got the participation of the people, and it's excluded that, and it's just been a gradual creep. So we're trying. There's very few of us for what we need. More people come in and join up part of the out. Whether you want to be a candidate, whether you want to be a member, or whether you don't even want to be a member, but you want to be part of it by just contributing, you can. And when you contribute, you're helping. So, and hopefully we can share some of these things out. So, Sam, shall we go on to the APEC submission that we did? This is our sort of 2020. Trip to Parliament. We came across the APEC law change, which APEC, for those that probably never ever heard of it before, one of the biggest protests that we had in New Zealand was for a trade revolution, really, for New Zealand, called TPP. And TPP has been signed, so I don't want to confuse anyone here, because these things become quite confusing because there's layers and layers. So TPP was signed by the incumbent government, and it was unilaterally signed across all parties. I think that the only ones that abstained from it were the Greens. That's I don't want to misrepresent any party how they acted in that process, because it was very inflammatory, and it should be. But since TPP has been signed, even though after it was signed there was a big announcement that we were going to be flooded with all of this trade and that sort of thing just before Christmas, that hasn't happened. We're just swapped. We're basically how a free trade agreement works is basically you swap goods. It's a nothing burger. So anyway, so then the next one, which has always been in existence, which is the RCEP, which is basically a trade agreement of the Global South. We'll hopefully put some links up for people to read a bit about it. Please don't expect that we can put up the document, which is the RCEP trade agreement, because those agreements, same as TPP, they're never public, and a lot of the time the people that are even the democratic representatives in those things never get to see them. So where we're at now is we are hosting APEC, and APEC is the organisation of the Global South that is going to handle signing and negotiating and implementing RCEP. and we will be hosting that from November. I can't tell you when the signing date is because I could not find that. The details are very sparse. I got more information by looking at other governments are much more transparent and are talking about it quite a lot better, and it's more publicised. So I have to look at stuff from overseas. So this APEC will run for the whole year. It's APEC 21. And so that means that we will be hosting trade envoys, and it's all to coordinate around the yacht race and a lot of big events that we've got in a pro APEC stance. It's a way of showcasing New Zealand. It's a way of showcasing who we are and all of that sort of thing. In the negative, we're still signing a deal that no one's seen. So, but these laws that were changed shocked the outdoors party because they were significant. And I want Sue to speak to that because Sue gave the submission on those laws.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, the first thing with these trade agreements, what you learn at law school is that the government make the law and you've got this lovely transparent process and everybody can submit in it. We've seen it today with the COVID law and we've seen it again with the APEC law, that actually what you're told is not quite true, because what happens with these trade deals is we sit here in New Zealand happily doing our thing. Meanwhile, we have overseas people negotiating all sorts of deals that impact potentially on almost all parts of our lives, and we have no say in what they negotiate. We don't know even the scope of what they negotiate often. They go away, they do these secret deals, they come back with a signed agreement, and that becomes binding on our government. So it's absolutely back to front, upside down from what is supposed to happen, because our government is giving away its sovereign powers effectively to this overseas agreement. And it's trade, but it's intellectual property. It's a whole range of different things that disempowers New Zealand and makes it obliged to do what it signs up to do, basically in a contract with overseas states. So when Michael's a great researcher. He came up with this and said, hey, look, the outdoors party need to have a look at this. And I had a look at it too. And I went, you're absolutely right. This is just not the direction that New Zealand wants to go, because of course we think that we should take more control over our future and have more self-sufficiency. We shouldn't be signing away our rights. But then beyond that whole fundamental thing of is it a good thing or not, we've also been involved in the gun issues, where the Outdoors Party was one of the submitters about the gun law reforms. It's been really sensitive in New Zealand. The incident last year, obviously, with the overseas terrorist who was somehow given gun license by our New Zealand police. He was given a whole range of additional ammunition by the New Zealand police, even when the ammunition supplier asked about, surely this can't be right, the police said, no, it's fine, he can have it. So all of these mistakes were made under the normal fit and proper person processes. All of these weird things happened. This chap who'd barely been in New Zealand, who didn't have any New Zealand friends who could verify him, was somehow verified by people that the police didn't talk to. He commits a terrorist act, a tragedy, absolutely awful act. But the consequence of that is that the New Zealanders have lost a lot of their rights, because effectively the fit and proper gun owners in New Zealand have been punished because of this wrong act by the New Zealand police and not checking it. So it's a pretty sensitive topic for a whole lot of reasons. There was a tragedy, a lot of people lost family, and that was awful in Christchurch, but it's also had a major impact on outdoors activities and things that New Zealanders hold dear, the ability to be able to go out hunting and fishing, gathering your own food, feeding your family, enjoying the outdoors. Sometimes people with guns that their fathers and grandfathers had owned. So we'd already been through this process of doing a submission on that. We're told, well, too bad, the decision's been made. You've lost your rights to have the guns because the government's decided. Then we read the APEC law, and guess what it's doing? Foreign representatives can come into New Zealand without any approval, bring any gun they like into New Zealand, any of the kind of weapons that have been banished in New Zealand, semi-automatics, whatever they like, and they can bring them into our country and they can use them in our country. And so you really have to ask the question, why would the government want to pass that kind of law, and how is it possibly in the interests of the public of New Zealand? So we made a submission around this issue, and also the actual danger, because our New Zealand police are out there with all their gear and they know who's in their team. But then you're going to have all these foreign people from Russia, China, South America, representing the APEC countries with different uniforms, different gear. How are our police going to know whether it's a terrorist or whether it's some foreign official that approved through their military? So they call it sort of blue on blue, like it's a real concern for the health and safety of our police. So there were quite a lot of these type of issues that we raised, and we had a really good hearing in Wellington, and Michael and Mike were there as well. You might want to say a bit more about that.
Yeah, well, the only support we actually got was from the Green Party, from Golres, and one of the things that she acknowledged was that, the actual original terrorist, like what you said, so the original terrorist incident that shocked New Zealand under our nuclear-free stance was the two French government terrorists that came here. These weren't some random Joe Public. This was an organised hit, and bombed the Rainbow Warrior. And it's sort of, this is most of us in our living lifetime, and something that we shouldn't, we should never, least we ever forget. And we have been a country. One of the things that sort of stunned me is that we've had the World Cup here. We've hosted world events before. What's so special about this event? I believe that the RCEP is a terrible thing, but so does the government then, because why would it this is trade at the point of automatic weapons. It's very, very intense sort of stuff. And I know, yes, okay, we protested TPP, but people that did, no one was violent. It was due and just protest, and it was held out for a long time. And so is the RCEP. The RCEP is almost 2 decades old, and as we sit here today, India does not want to sign it, and that's one of the biggest populations in the RCEP. It believes that it is going to be well worse off, that it loses its food sovereignty and food security, and it loses its own dignity to be able to write its own laws. And so this is so we sort of, you only get 10 minutes, which we were lucky to get 10 minutes, and I think we did New Zealand really, really well. The sad thing is, you're only hearing about it now, and this is still steamrolling up to November, and all of 2021 is going to be about this and cause massive unrest. The New Zealand Outdoors Party believes in localism. It believes in coming back to the people and self-organising within the people of how do we organise our growing systems, how do we organise our justice system, how do we bring resilience into our economy, resilience into our food production, and not the fragility. We found out how fragile the global network of free trade is in the last few days. We found out how, in the last couple of months, and we found out how fragile centralisation is. The fact that supermarkets just could not supply, and from our Otaki electorate, and with the help of Sam, we've tried to push really hard for local businesses to be a priority, to be open. But this is not what this government or the opposition. And I'll be fair, they sort of one day they might murmur up and say, oh, we think it might be open, but they're in Parliament. We're here, we're talking to you on a YouTube channel, we're trying to grow. They've got the voice and they're not using it. That's why we're saying you've got to put us in. You've got to put real people in, people from that represent you. So, so that was the lighter side of this. It was I thought it was really good. We I've done plenty of submissions in council, and it was a bit different. We sort of got through it, and then we went outside and we thought, well, maybe we were quite worried. We thought maybe they might even just delete what we just did. So we went to sort of stand on the steps of Parliament, got ourselves together, and we started filming and having a little spiel about what we did. And so, it was, what did you think of that?
Yeah, it was quite quite an amazing situation, because you've got to be impressed by Parliament. I mean, if you haven't been to Parliament, you've got to go and have a look at Parliament. It is an important place, and there is a really strong sense of sort of decorum when you're there. You revere our Parliament. We should revere our Parliament. We should all revere it, because it is what's supposed to be representing us. So we're all standing outside on the steps, organising ourselves, doing some videos and some photos, and then a big crowd started to assemble. And thinking that we're some kind of important people, obviously, because we're all outside Parliament. And it was quite comical, wasn't it, that suddenly people were taking photos of us, taking our photos, sort of, I wonder what they're doing. So you've kind of always got to have fun with these things. Like there's a lot of stress preparing all this work. A lot of us work really long hours trying to understand all these issues and get to Wellington to present them. And when you get a bit of kind of fun out of it, it's really cool. It's great. What I found interesting in that submission was when Jerry Brownlee sort of asked us, in almost a state of shock, are you saying that this trade might not be a good idea? He was like, he almost disbelief that there may be even any other way of thinking about this. We've been through this, first of all, nationalisation process, and I've experienced a lot of it in the resource management process, where the government took away decisions from local communities because Nick knew best. Nick thought that he could make much better decisions for all of New Zealand than any of us could make for ourselves. But now it's another level again. We thought nationalisation was bad, but now it's globalisation. And so we make all of these global decisions. And yet, isn't it interesting, when the COVID thing falls apart, the COVID picks down, the first thing that happens is everyone wants to come home again.
Yeah.
All great national globalisation. Yeah, travelling here and working there and doing all these cool jobs. Suddenly everyone's back. So,
I think it's even in the cities too. So I think that, just the working from home, a lot of people, we had a bit of a problem where we were sort of siphoning people out of rural towns and small towns and regions where we're starting to really feel the effect, and all centralising and being factory farmed in the city in cubicles, and that's not going to happen anymore. In effect, there's probably 40,000 people that were commuting from in the Kapiti Coast to Wellington to work every day. Well, the builders and the tradespeople, they're going to have to, but 20% of them, or 50% of them maybe even, is just managerial class that are people that got no skin in the game, telling us how to farm, telling us all that sort of stuff. Well, they can come and live with us, and whatever's left of that industry, I still think we start self-organising as a country with what we've got to do. Like, New Zealand's great for when the skids go under something, we all just, from the grassroots, we just get stuck in and we fix it. We can do it. But that trade thing. I mean, like I even said, and they sort of looked shocked at me, but I said, well, because I was thinking from a fair trade perspective, in a fair trading agreement, that's where you don't hurt the country that you're trading with. You don't dump goods on to crush their market. You try to trade things, especially out of season. So, like when in another hemisphere, that's how we get vegetables all year, some vegetables and fruits all year round and things like that. But, I said, China's shut all its borders. China's shut its whole economy down. Why aren't our borders should be closed? And that was on the 23rd of February. They didn't even want to know. But if they'd shut the borders on the 23rd of February, we wouldn't be shut down. We wouldn't have had that 41 days or whatever, 49 days in shutdown, because we would have just shut it out. But
they talked
anyway,
about shutting the borders on. They talked about shutting the borders on the 2nd of February in New Zealand as a result of Wuhan, and they talked about in England they were shutting their borders in January. So although the Prime Minister is now saying we were fast, we were actually very, very slow. And between when we started talking about shutting our borders and when we actually shut our borders, it was extremely leaky. It leaked and leaked and leaked and leaked. And like you say, we would not have had to have been shut down in our homes for over a month if the government had acted swiftly at the start when the risk first came up and closed the borders. I trained as a health protection officer. I did the job of this contact tracing that they're doing. And what we were taught was if you get an outbreak, contain the outbreak first. Contain it, get information, and then make decisions about what you need to do. But what you don't do is let everybody travel far and wide everywhere around the world, because then it spreads everywhere. So we actually got the whole thing back to front. We were way too slow at the start, and then we overreacted and we did. But the rest of the world had realised it wasn't nearly as bad as what it looked like. And if you look at the death rate, it's actually pretty much the same as flu. The independent evidence is saying if you're over 65, it's like a nasty flu. If you're under 65, it's not nearly as bad as the average flu. But what did we do? We suddenly put all of our eggs in the COVID basket. We forgot about all the other health problems. We forgot about all the domestic violence. We forgot about all the mental health. We forgot about people's jobs. And all of a sudden, where are we now? We've got some massive problems. And then despite all those problems, now we're looking back at globalization again.
Yeah, and I mean, we will have little trade flurries because of that will help a little bit ease the pain going forward, because America has actually it's taken an even more extreme version of what we did, and it's making farmers dump their growers dump their produce. It's making it's making people just not supply, basically, and now they're desperate for our product. But that's going to be short-lived. Like the area of trade, as far as free trade, it's and I know there'll be a lot of people watching that won't actually understand the difference between free trade and fair trade. But we still trade with China. That China is still got tariffs on our goods going out, and that lasts for a long, long time. Whereas we've got no tariffs on theirs, where it makes it unequal. It means that our labour force is either forced down to low wages to make it competitive, or we just abandon, processing our logs, or we abandon, like our wool industry is just gone because of that sort of thing. But I just want to talk a little bit about there'll be some people thinking, well, why are you so terrified of RCEP? So I want Sue to help me a little bit with this part. So the RCEP, my major concern was around intellectual property, and we need some serious antitrust laws now, quite urgently, to cover our universities, because our universities do not have the right to package up every plant, every human, everything that everything that we use to farm, and call it intellectual property and sell it to Google, or sell it to Blackstone Investments or Mark Zuckerberg. They just do not have that right. And it's a shame because it's called intellectual property. I do not want to sound like I'm anti-intellectual. I study science. I love science. But we've seen some national policies, Sue, where it's talking about one science, and unfortunately, that was a product of eugenics, and it was also just a way of thinking in philosophy. It's a way of thinking where people get to the point where they believe, the problem is actually having to argue a point, like we don't want to do that because we know we're right. So let's have a one science. Let's have Wikipedia or Snopes, and then that there will be the fact. And whatever's happening out here in the rabble-rousal of the public, don't worry about that because we'll just establish that fact here. And so we've got a significant industry that has wrapped itself around this in preparation for RCEP. These are private-public partnerships, and they've set up within our universities. And we've been tracing it for about 6 years, and it's the product of about $3 billion invested by our government into science and innovation, into our universities, which has also attracted the exact same amount from Silicon Valley and Wall Street. Now, that means that what happens is, we've all heard it, GMO ryegrass is going to save New Zealand from climate change because it's going to cut down the methane things. There's a lot of concern in people about GMOs. I'm going to give you the stock standard of why a GMO is bad, and without getting into whether or not it causes cancer or anything like that. Causation can be determined, yes, but let's just stick with the economics of it. Our universities are still Canterbury University. A man by the name of Jack Heinemann has done significant studies into natural versus GMO in most of these overseas countries that have been using GMOs. The advice that New Zealand government took when it banned GMO was good advice, and it's actually even more correct now than what it was back then. It's inescapable to ban them because they actually do not yield. They cause an enormous amount of transgenic spread. So if you alter the gene to make it Roundup ready, meaning you can spray it with Roundup and it doesn't die, that transfers into the weeds and then the weeds won't die. If a lot of these plants, once you've altered a gene, you make the transgenic material and the plant are often infertile. So what that means in 40 centuries of agriculture or the agrarian life, or the fact that we're actually here, we got here by saving your seed and the exchange of seed between farmers, which created the biodiversity, which created the breeding, which, that was our ability to grow. So even in this country now, we've had a rapid loss of the diversity of seed supply. So we're starting to work towards maybe a duopoly or a monopoly of seed control, which means that, we could get to other countries that have already been in these trade deals like India before, where the cost of the seed might be so much that it's not worth planting. So we have to understand the dissent side of those agreements, and we can post plenty of links. It's not new. It's 20 to 30 years of intensity of these agreements, and these agreements really suit the people that are rent seeking. You'd have to go back in time in New Zealand politics to hear that term. You don't hear it anymore. Rent seeking is basically the skimming by the foreign investors. And like I told you just a little bit earlier, $3 billion has been invested in our science, and both the investment side of that science and the government side of that science is heading to that RCEP. And so,
yeah, it's really,
I'm talking too long. You have a go.
What I was going to say is we've been concerned in New Zealand for a long time about selling our assets to overseas. But this is even worse, because what we're doing away is we're giving away our public resources, our nature, the things that nature provides with us. We're giving them away to private companies, and the people that are giving them away are not even the people that own them, because they're our assets. They're the plants, the genetics in the plants, the nature in our native plants, but in our crops and all the things are the commons. They belong to all of us. And so we thought that Rogernomics was a sort of done thing in the 80s, but actually it's going on. It's still continuing, where things that were a public resource are being transferred into private hands. And it's bad enough with anything, but it's even worse, in my view, with food, because what we've learned, again, from COVID, when we're faced with a threat, what's the most important thing? Food and shelter. So we all wanted to go home, and we all wanted to make sure we'd gone to the well, and toilet paper, but we all wanted to make sure that we'd gone to
flour. For some reason, flour.
We wanted to have food in our homes, and we wanted to be safe and warm and dry in our homes. What are we doing with these international agreements? We're giving away the control of our food. We're giving away food sovereignty. We're giving away the ability. I'm lucky because I've got a veggie garden at home, and I'm away from home a fair bit. So a lot of my veggies go to seed. So it's quite lucky I've got these kind of crops coming on through where they've actually self-seeded. But it's actually a really good thing. When you need some food, you can go in your garden, you can pick it. But if your seeds are all hybrid seeds that don't self-seed, and you're in it breaching some Monsanto agreement or whatever, if you're using any seeds that you didn't buy from them, whether you're a home gardener or a farmer, we've actually given away something that's absolutely fundamental. You know, what's really the GMO thing you talked about, really interesting. Back in the I think about 2006 or something, we had a New Zealand inquiry about whether we should go down the GMO path in New Zealand or whether we should stay away from GMO. But we actually, the government listened to the people, and they had all sorts of experts, but anybody could make a submission about their views. And a lot of the submissions would have been the same sort of thing, but that's all good because you get a feeling on what people think. But then out of all that, there would have been experts, and just when I say experts, I don't necessarily mean a university academic. I mean people like Michael that have spent his life working with the land and doing all these activities and learning stuff, real life hands-on experience, hands in the soil. And this whole concept of wisdom of the crowd. If you listen to the crowd, they might have different extremes, but overall the crowd gets a really good answer. But what we've started doing, we've taken away all of these decisions from the crowd and the wisdom of the crowd and the wisdom of local communities. They've got their own values and their own ways of doing things and their own climate, their own challenges. We've taken it away and we said, no, you're all the same. And somebody sitting in Wellington that probably hasn't even been barefoot in the soil probably since they were a child is making decisions for the people who live in the communities. So the APEC thing is an extreme of the same thing, but it's a democracy thing, it's a food sovereignty thing, it's an economic issue, and it's just a choice. It's a New Zealand culture thing. They're taking away our freedoms. They're taking away our farmers' freedoms. So there's so many levels that we need to think about. And yet, apart from this kind of forum, how often have you heard this conversation? How when do you last even think about these things?
Yeah. So just a moment here. We've actually got well over 20 viewers. Just to let you guys know. Sorry to cut in. But we did get a question, and that's from Aaron Bradley Jones. Sorry if I get that one wrong. But the question Aaron is asking is: RCEP said foreign corporate will be treated like local citizens. What does that mean for the foreign land ownership / land grabs, and what does it mean for our water?
That's a really interesting question, because on the face of it, it means if our law has to treat them as if they are New Zealand citizens, our Overseas Investment Commission has got no right to give priority to New Zealanders over the use of water or over the control of land, the ownership of land. It's so New Zealanders, it's a strong theme, the meetings that I've been involved in. New Zealanders are really, really unhappy about our water being given away, bottled or unbottled, to overseas countries, when we've got so many places in New Zealand that don't have good quality water of themselves because it's been contaminated and it's heavy in nitrates or copper chrome arsenic from pesticides, whatever. So why would any responsible government give away essentials like water and access to water to an overseas company to the detriment of their own people? It's a really, really, really important point.
So the other side to that too is that there are enormous accesses to the commons, but unlike so what we saw in what we saw very quickly in the probably about 4 days after economists were saying, well, we're going to have the biggest crash since the Great Depression. You saw things that you probably think of New Zealand companies like Burger King and NZME, and you see these things and we can't carry on. Whereas you compare that to the builders, well, they're being told to mortgage their own home to keep their business going. And the difference is that the things like NZME, which is owned by American banks like JP Morgan, Chase Bank, and all that sort of thing, which is public information, you can verify that. And you've got Burger King, which is owned by Blackstone Investments, which is the bank of billionaires. They might, when they talk about investment, it's one way to start with, then the barrier goes in, and then it's just an extraction model. Just think of it like that water. Once they've bought the right or legislated the right to extract your water, it won't matter how much, if something goes wrong with that extraction model, like the mining, that a lot of New Zealanders haven't been sympathetic enough to the people that protest about mining, and we should be, because the damage that has been done by overseas companies is not the same. It's severe, and it's just abandoned. And whereas if it's a New Zealand company, we see it right, because we've got skin in the game, because it's our neighbourhood usually. So, I personally did not like that in New Plymouth, where I was born, in Kapunga, I was born next to the gas fields, that this government came in and said that it wouldn't give any more licenses to use those resources that we've got, but it's been giving rights to foreign companies, and it's been giving permits to, and the same for our water. And so I think that sets, for people that are sort of sitting on the fence, you watch this later and you think, oh, what's this guy know? I mean, you got to think about that. You think about, well, any government, let's be neutral. Any government has handled these assets or these resources in the same way. It's a shopping cart for overseas, whereas it's not for our own people. For our own people, when we're talking about our own resources, look at the stacks of rules and regulations that have been coming at farming. That they were endless. The Indigenous Biodiversity National Policy, something that's been again in the pipeline for 11 years. It's probably cost so many $100 million to prepare that policy, and it was basically, the water policy and the biodiversity policy. It's basically well, we don't know how to farm it, we don't know how to protect it, so let's just fence off the rivers. Let's fence off more of the rivers. Let's fence off most of your farm, and that's abandonment of your responsibility as a caretaker of that land. And it's totally against natural farming. You use the biodiversity to protect the biodiversity, to protect the soil, to protect the water, to protect the people. So, it's a very, very good question. The question still remains that we need to, as people, think in our heads, how do we, going back to your constitution, Sue, how do we make sure that any government, that Roger Douglas 2.0 GMO, edited from the labs of wherever, doesn't come up and do this, in 2027? How do we lock in our commons, our right to save and sow seed, that you cannot patent life, that life, nature is not for sale in New Zealand. Our freedoms are not for sale. Our freedom to farm, our freedom to live, our freedom to embrace and live in the outdoors. We just all lost our ability to go outdoors. And, that was the best thing for us to make sure we didn't catch COVID-19, was to get vitamin D. We lost our raw milk supply because supposedly that's going to kill us. Like, how ridiculous is that? Everybody in this country drank raw milk. We did not get TB from raw milk. We got TB from TB.
And everybody in a lot of European countries still drink raw milk. Why can they? And they make cheese from raw milk, and they make
delicacy.
Yeah. What if we? Because we're trying to do everything to a formula instead of doing it with a natural feel. It's all become centralized decision making that doesn't provide for expertise, real expertise, people that have done it for generations. I find this whole thing really quite sad with COVID, but it comes back to the whole food thing as well. Wouldn't you think that the priority would be given to looking after our own people, our own food supplies, our own businesses, our local businesses, so that our economy keeps going? I do not understand why these big subsidies have been given to the big companies. Why are we giving, $30 or $50 million, whatever it is, to a media company that's mainly a multinational? Surely they're big enough to look after themselves. And yet our local small farmers, our local businesses are really struggling. It shows just a lack of prioritisation and a lack of values. If you're the government of New Zealand, you represent the people of New Zealand. The people of New Zealand vote for you. You don't get voted for by the multinational corporation of China or the multinational corporation of America. You get voted for by the people of New Zealand to look after the people of New Zealand. And it's like something has gone so badly wrong that they don't even see anything wrong with what they're doing. It's almost like we've just got to go, stop. Look, just stop. We've just got to start again. What is the most important things here? We know the most important things, because when we had a threat, we came to our homes and we wanted food and we want water. So let's have a look at those most important things. How can we make our communities resilient so that whatever threat we get, we've got a home, we've got food, and we've got water? It doesn't matter if we've got intellectual property rights for different things or foreign investment agreements. Let's make sure that everybody's got a home, food, and water.
And I know there's a lot of people in Otaki that have self-organised into groups and food sovereignty and security groups, because I've been to your groups, and I think that they're just wonderful. But those groups, they are the future MFE. They are the future MPI. They are the future of New Zealand. Self-organising and finding efficiency, or innovating, not in labs, but innovating within the community. Like these places that have done zero waste. Otaki is a prime example. We've as a community, we've really invested in human capital into that project. Those projects don't cost government money. They're people giving their time, and they're not recognised enough. And this is where a response can come from. So yeah, I'm with you, Sue. I don't think that we should be bailing out JP Morgan's, NZME, or any of those companies. I think that we should be, if anything, just saying, hey, look, New Zealand, go into local labs, think about rebuilding your communities, and what do you need? And I mean, a lot of it will be taking off the regulations.
Exactly. We've got the number 8 wire mentality built into our genetics. We can fix anything as long as we give people a chance and we don't bog them down with bureaucratic red tape that makes it too hard. You want to have your innovative people being innovated. You don't want them sitting in filling in forms and doing government returns and all these different plans. I mean, a farmer knows what the health and safety risks are. It doesn't make it any safer that you fill in all these forms and processes and everything else. Well, probably not. Let the people do what they're good at doing and get on with doing it, and trust our people. Our people have thrived for years. Why have we made it so hard to do what we're good at doing? And we've got this whole layer of bureaucracy that actually is disconnected from what we're doing, trying to tell us how to do what we're doing.
There's a very strange thing about this time that we just went through, though. It's like, where was your line in the sand? When I went to get the raw milk, and they shut it down 4 days before, like it had been trading really all the way through. And this is an outdoors thing. You just go to the vending machine. It's outdoors. Everybody was amazing. Keeping the 2 meters, washing the machine, even the button and all that sort of stuff. And we all sort of mimicked, we'll do all of this. Then you go to the supermarket and you're bumping into each other. Staff are bumping into you. Staff have got no gloves on, and they're handling your vegetables, and someone's picking it up, looking at it. And, people are going around with masks hanging down below their nose, and you think, geez, this is just, what are we doing? And when they shut that down, Sue, I was like, oh, why? Because, it's only a few days to go, and there was it was great, self-organisation. I think the whole community just hooked onto it, was closing down, and everybody just went to come and stock up. Well, they had to go out and milk the cows again to get enough milk to supply everybody.
Yeah. And this is what we should be doing. I don't understand why we closed down the small businesses and left the big ones open. It should have been the other way around. If we really were concerned, if anyone genuinely was concerned about this virus, wouldn't it have been a whole lot better to have had a lot of small businesses where
I agree.
People could go and buy their local things? But no, we're all going to go to 1 or 2 supermarkets where there's thousands of people coming through. If you've got one person serving in the supermarket that's sick, they could have contaminated the whole population because everybody's in the same supermarket.
It blew in healthcare, and it was really lucky that it didn't blow in the supermarkets. But the thing is there's lots of stories that media haven't told, and they've done the country a disservice because. Still coming out of it, if anything happens, we need to know what didn't work. Couriers could not keep up. Couriers were like, every day was Christmas Day for them, but they couldn't keep up with the stuff. And the thing is, they're driving around things in the van for 10 days. These were goods that have a package to last 3 days. And let us pick our stuff up, like it was.
And the other thing that's interesting with this COVID thing, like you've said, they lost control in the healthcare. It's okay in the supermarket, but one of the theories that's coming out loud and clear is the people that are getting these tests and they can't understand where they caught it from, I would love to see how many of them have been vaccinated with the flu vaccine, because one of the theories is that the flu vaccine contains the same corona contaminant. So if you've recently had the flu vaccine and you're tested for COVID, you tend to show a positive result. Not everybody, but a lot of them. And so you're looking at these people in the healthcare, working in the healthcare, have all been vaccinated because it's mandatory for them to get vaccinated to work there. When they're showing a positive result, have they been exposed to COVID virus, or have they just had a flu vaccine and that's testing positive? And I actually checked today. I thought, right, Boris Johnson. Let's have a look. I Googled Boris Johnson flu vaccine. Guess what? October last year, there's a big photo of Boris Johnson getting his flu vaccine. And so not only was he testing positive, but there was a virologist I heard on the radio, interviewed by Radio New Zealand, I think it was a replay of an earlier talk, said one of the really tricky things with the coronavirus is if you've been exposed to it before, through a vaccine, when they've been testing vaccines, when you get exposed to it again, you get an extra bad effect from it. So this cytokine storm that's coming up is where people have been previously exposed. Just imagine if the flu vaccine is the previous exposure and then they get exposed to it again and they get the cytokine storm. Now, where's the data? Who's done the research? You know,
well, there's definitely none in New Zealand. But I mean, the thing is, you know, at the moment there's definitely solid research from the SARS-1 outbreak that 34% of those cases that they had were linked to, you know, it's correlation, but genetically, yes, because that gene has been taken and put into the vaccine. It's similar in causing the hyperimmunity, because the hyperimmunity that's the severe thing. I mean, it's a lot for someone to understand. It's like, you know, there's vaccines that are grown from cultures, and there's vaccines that are a GMO, and we ban GMOs, so we shouldn't have any GMO vaccines.
Yeah.
I think it's fair enough that we actually talk about it, seeing it's a law of this country.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, you look at 100 people exposed to COVID, and of that, I think it's roughly 50% didn't even know they had it. They had no reaction to it at all. They test that they've been exposed, but they didn't even know they had it. It's only 0.3% who die. And a small amount get sick, and then a lot of them get a cold, like just kind of light flu symptoms, but not too much at all. Now, why are some people having no reaction at all and some people dying? What is the difference about their immunity that's making some people get a major reaction, some people not getting a reaction at all? So rather than running around trying to block the virus, why don't we focus on what is it that we need to do as individuals so that we get a lesser reaction to it rather than a major reaction?
Because this won't be the last time that we have these sorts of problems, because there's so many people with we've become fragile as human beings because of the way that what the food that we eat. We've lost that diversity in our food. We've lost it. Our lives are different. 70% of the world's population were working in the soil. We were agrarian, whereas that's really flipped with modern life, basically, and part of it being a process of these trade deals as a modernisation to being basically just force fed, like factory farmed, basically, and that's and you're not got that diversity of food. You're not eating the raw foods. I actually thought it was really cool. I'll just show you this little one here. We just got this one the other day, and see that's honey. I don't know how well you can see it.
Yep.
Very, very.
Just
good
bring it
honey.
a bit closer to the camera.
How's that?
Just to the left a little bit. Yeah, right side. Sorry. Yep, there we go. I think they'll see that now.
So
cool.
100% raw honey, raw.
And is that, I got a
Raw
question,
honey.
is that cardboard? It looks like cardboard.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
great. It's a cardboard package. Natural meadow honey, 100% raw honey from Marlborough. Beautiful.
Wow.
But raw. And I thought, hang on, like, you know, some honey's pasteurized, you know, I suppose it is. But you know, like, the thing is would we really be that terrified to eat raw honey? Well, these poor people have to put on the bottom of the label that do not feed to a baby under 1 year of age.
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And you know,
We've
too far. That's too far for me. You know,
we've lost plot with our food. I mean, we're not really talking about food today, but the whole food side of things, raw natural food, but also getting your microbiome from eating all the diversity with the good bacteria influence your health so much. Your skin bacteria, so getting your hands in the soil, you're getting good, healthy, natural bacteria, getting good bacteria in your gut has a massive influence on your health. It's an amazing impact on your health.
And I've just got to, sorry, I got to cut in and say something. With this whole coronavirus thing, since everyone's sanitizing, of course, you know, that's going to be leading to another problem. Everyone, you know, they're forcing everyone to sanitize, wash basically every 10 minutes, when theoretically you only need to do it like once an hour and sanitize twice or 3 times a day, because it lasts a long time on your hands. Now, just to think, in the future, in about 10 years' time, you know, people are going to suffer if they don't sanitize. And because we're not used to diseases under the fingernails in future, that's going to be another problem that's going to arise eventually. So that plays into part with the outdoors and dirt. Just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah. You know, you got to think, is the cure worse than the problem? And my conclusion, like, I was a little bit nervous about the virus right at the start when we were hearing these sort of 10% death rates, and, you know, we really didn't know much about it. But the more I researched it and the more I learned, the risk is not the virus. The risk and the problem is the government's response to the virus. And we need to really learn from that. I think it's going to be so important to have a proper investigation into what happened, how on earth was a series of decisions made that took us down this path that transferred so much wealth from New Zealanders to overseas multinational companies, because the only money that most of us have been able to spend is to the big telcos, the food companies, the power companies, and all the little businesses that make up so much of the quality of our lives and our communities have been closed down.
Yeah.
So there's been this massive transfer of wealth away from the people. You know, who made these decisions? What were they thinking? Were they thinking at all? You know,
I think too, there is in the severity of it, like, we do know, like, that at least we have that information. We know the people that are most at risk and those that need to be protected. And I don't see that going forward. I don't actually see anything that's really concrete in protecting those people. I don't see the rest homes being totally protected. You know, I've seen laundry services going from one rest home to the next rest home to the next rest home. That sort of thing's stupid. Why the hell would you do that? And then the other thing is cleaners that clean one and clean the other, and, you know, so you've got all these spreads. And then hospitals that have had these big spreads, you know, that's we've got. I don't want to promote it, but occupational safety and health. Why haven't they charged someone? If the Minister of Health did not provide that PPE gear, if the DHB did not react and provide the PPE, like, at least every 3 days, those poor people that were having to deal with this and try and provide health care and dignity to the people that were shut out, they also had to deal with an unresponsive system that did not respond to their need. They said they needed PPE, and they still haven't got it.
You've got to really take your hats off to all of those frontline people that were exposed, especially at the start. We didn't know how bad it was. What courage to go to work, don't know. You might be putting your own life and your own family's life at risk. You might not be able to spend time with your children, and everyone's stressed and worried. I'm in huge awe of their courage of doing what they had to do to look after the people that they were looking after. At that level, and again, that's real people in a community doing their job and often going beyond the call of duty to make other people's lives better. That real hands-on stuff, you've just got to give them just absolutely the thumbs up. Total admiration.
Yeah, people before self. I mean, it's easy for us in hindsight to be saying this now, that we think that there were some overreactions and some underreactions, but that is real courage. I mean, I've seen people in the supermarket terrified, completely terrified, and they didn't have to be terrified if that food supply and everything had been shared, across those local areas. It wouldn't have been like that. It wouldn't have crashed.
They could have gone to the local veggie garden. Their family could have harvested the food that they needed. They didn't need to go into town and go into a big business at all. They could have just stayed local. Everyone could have kept an eye on each other. They could have looked out for each other. They would have had their best food, but they would have also had that support and the connection, because it's the other thing that I've seen, these people being isolated in their own home. And we really, really, really must learn from all of this. You make the best decision that you can make at the time, but you'd like to think that if it ever happens again, we will do it so differently. We will actually think people and communities first.
Yeah, well, we won't. I think the thing is if we do, if going forward, if New Zealand can build that localism, just put globalism to the side. If we were building localism properly, organising as people and as businesses and deal with this environment problem, because we are the environment, and get all this right, get all those linkages right locally, open that up so that there's our innovation, we're making all of these different things. So if you had to shut off Otaki, it wouldn't need anything from the outside world. That's the most highly innovative hub ever.
Yeah.
Yes. And if you've got a whole country like that, you've got the most innovative country on planet Earth. Whereas if you've got that peak, that pyramid, where we've been buying almost as much food from overseas to feed us as what we're selling, that's ridiculous. We're the food bowl of the South Pacific. Yeah. We're the safety net for these countries if something happens. And we were, touch wood, we were lucky that nothing else happened while we were in lockdown, that we didn't have a bloody another earthquake, or we didn't have something else go astray, because those supermarkets, those supply lines crashed. And
our
healthcare was crashed with it had a miserable amount of patients. It created more patients with its staff. So, and these poor people, they're terrified. You don't know what's going to happen, because that would be I was thinking about that the other day, because the 2 weeks asymptomatic, the worst thing that someone could tell you is, you've got it. Well, you know that maybe you've got 2 weeks to wait to whether or not this thing is going to kill you, and so when you're worried, you're going to get sicker, and and that was wrong. That we had much better metadata that could have been analysed, and we just didn't have enough people doing it. We should have had a team of about 200 to 300 people, not 2 people, not one university. And we should have been integrating that information, which they did not. We should have been integrating that information with other countries and gone outside of the CDC and gone into countries that have had much better. The CDC, America, hadn't even really started to treat it, whereas South Korea and Sweden and all these other countries, they had exceptional case knowledge, and we didn't even use it. We just used the cruise ship. The cruise ship. That was the worst model that we could have used to work out what to do with New Zealand. But anyway, Sam, so we've got no more No more questions?
So yeah, we've gotten a few comments, but we can probably work out an ending to this because we're about 5 minutes above schedule now. But that's okay. We had a good talk, and it was really great to discuss some stuff. And we got a few comments. And we got that question, like you said, when I got you guys to answer that one. But another comment from this is a comment from Darlene Morgan. She said we have too many toxins in our food and environment. And then Aaron, also going back to the honey pot that you showed on the camera, he goes, that honey is absolutely beautiful, tastes and look wise, very sturdy, 100% biodegradable packaging as well. But anyways, everyone, if you're watching this live stream right now and you've got the chat in front of you, make sure you leave a little question or a comment down below in the just down below in the Facebook or YouTube, whatever platform you're on, and just leave us a comment so that we can answer that comment as a question before we go off the live stream tonight. So we'll wait about 5 more minutes for the questions to come in, and then I think that's it. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for some questions, I think we're gonna go into the conclusion of is the current system fit for purpose, and what is the solution that the Outdoors Party has on the table, for the people of New Zealand.
Yeah. The current system isn't fit for purpose. We can do so much better than what we've been doing in relation to the COVID virus, in relation to the trade agreements, and in relation to our agriculture, in relation to our food, and in relation to our democracy. And it actually all comes back to something very simple. The government's job is to support and represent the people. The people have got amazing knowledge and expertise. They're affected. They've got the most vested interest in getting the best possible outcome. Why have we had this system where all of the power of decision making has been taken away from the people? The very first thing that the Outdoors Party will do is to give the power back to the people.
Yeah, and to the people that's in every aspect of society, not just agriculture. It's across everything. Teachers should be deciding what happens in schools. Doctors and nurses, they're the people that should be planning and structuring that healthcare system. And the people that it affects and the communities that it affects. Like for farming, we're no different. I don't want to be a whinging farmer. We're no different than anybody else. In fact, we feel a great affinity with teachers because teachers are just being told again and again and again what to do, and more paperwork to fill out. I remember our family doctor saying, 25% of my time is filling out these damn ACC forms, and denying people their health care and denying them the ability to get back to work. And he left, and he was a pillar of the community for your health. It caused a lot of anxiety in Levin when you lose somebody like that just can't take it anymore. And so and that's the same as our farmers. The disrespect of intergenerational knowledge by basically people that have got a half-baked degree. I dare you, come and farm. Come and produce that sort of stuff. But more so, come and enjoy it. Yeah, come and enjoy it.
Get everybody talking, and we can all learn from our own experience. And you put people in a room and you get amazing outcomes. Like we said all the time with our candidates talking, everyone putting all their ideas on the table. We learn from each other. Why can't we run a country like that? Well, we listen to all the real life people who have got experience, and they might have a problem, but the guy down the road or the guy in the next village has got a solution to that problem. Why can't we put all the ideas on the table? The wisdom of the crowd thing, it's just a lovely, lovely concept. We are the crowd. We're the people. We're the crowd. We've got the wisdom. Give the power back to us so we can use our wisdom.
Yeah, and I think, Sue, the most marvellous thing about this country is we've got all of the traditional knowledge of mariculture and food growing and the environment, and we've got our own our own sort of Kiwi way that evolved over many years, and then we've got all these new people coming in, which is fantastic from cultures that are so vast, and just we're a great country just to incorporate. We're colourblind. We're not into all that sort of stuff like other countries have become, because they're being ripped apart by trade deals. We can do so much as a country with the knowledge that we have in our people, because we've got it all. We've got it all.
I've been saying to people, it's like we're all on the waka together. Let's enjoy being on the waka together, work together. It's the people against the corporations. It shouldn't be the people against the people. If the people work together, then there's so much we can do. We're doing okay. We can do so much.
Anyways, we've got about 4 minutes left of questions. We haven't received any at the moment, but we've got 25 people viewing. Sue Gray, I'd just like to mention that when I did post it to your Facebook page, it for some reason deleted it, but maybe next time we can actually pre-plan that a little bit better. But we've got one more. Actually, we do have a question from Soraya. Michael K. Soraya asks, what does UPOV 91 or patents on seed mean? So just briefly describe that really quick before we end this up.
Well, UPOV is that's basically, so that's sort of like the central hub where patents are held. And that basically means that all licenses of anything that gets patented is held there, and so that's actually quite a scary thing, because whoever controls that really controls the seed supply for the world. I think one of the most wonderful things in New Zealand is that we've always had great seed banks. We've got we've got people that have been storing and cultivating heritage seeds and things like that. One of the things with UPOV laws and the what really is in behind APEC and the UPOV laws and all that is an industry that very quickly harvests up every single seed, every single variety, and patents it. And so you lose the ability to, we've heard plenty about creating biodiversity, and you just can't create biodiversity. We do have a few things that are patented in this country, and that makes it really, really hard, actually. Like macadamia trees are patented by a single person. Personally, I don't think that's a good idea. I think that it just creates a silly thing. Like, I don't think you should own life. I don't think that that you should create like an oligarchy position. Like, I think there's a freedom element to it, that you should be free to do what you want. I also think that there's the biggest problem with the UPOV and owning seeds is what they call genetic uniformity. So if we're all just randomly breeding plants, animals, and things like that, we are more likely to be overall breeding a more robust community of plants and animals. As soon as these laws have actually taken place in countries like India and especially America, what's happened is that they get genetic uniformity, and then all the crops fall over. We're almost at that at the moment, because we lost all of the pea crops, and we've had it where basically the vines, there wasn't a big enough degree in difference in the kiwi fruit vines, so the only way that you can try and stop something that it's going through a genetically uniform crop is to try and wipe it out faster than the disease is spreading. And in like our video that we showed last week, for those that watched it, we had a man on there, Mark Shepherd, and he talked about just in his little situation there, he would plant a whole heap of things, and the ones that died, well, they're no good, and the ones that lived, well, they carried on breeding in his system. And that's the right way, and this is all the wrong way. So we don't want fragile crops, because we go back to, for anybody who wants to look it up, the potato famine, which is in my heritage, my Irish heritage, is why basically a country of 9 million people turned into 4.5 million people very quickly.
And so we've got one more question. This could be directed at Sue Gray or Michael K, but probably most suited for Michael K. Do you think regenerative farming is the future? So just follow up that on just like a minute comment, just because we're getting a bit over time now.
Fair enough. I think we've been really trying to drill down on what our agriculture policy should or how it's best to communicate to people, and I'm really keen. I'll just give you a bit of an insight. Love to have some feedback from people that are watching, but I don't want to be the future farming smart agriculture 2050 by Eric Schmidt of Google. I want to live in a country that we're actually fully regenerative agriculture by 2030. The quicker, the better. And so, I think regenerative agriculture, such a wide net to swoop over New Zealand. Like, you've got a lot of freedom there to create your way, your own version of it. And I just think, I think it's the future. I think a lot of New Zealanders that know anything about it agree with that. I think that it also is very, very regenerative for the organic movement itself. It actually it really does pose great innovative areas from the grassroots and even our, what I call my chemical brothers and sisters in their farming practices. It's a slow progress that you don't have to just overnight change your system. There's a lot of things that it'll be like how your dad farmed, basically, or your grandfather farmed, and there's just so many ways to transition out of where we're heading into a better future.
Yeah, farming with nature. This war on nature is never going to be won. If we've got systems where we work with nature, it's so obviously going to be better, isn't it?
Well, much more productive. Sure. Like the productive side, I just want to focus on that just for a few seconds. Just I know we've got not much time left, but you make more money doing it this way because your costs are less and your production's more. And I just think it's so hard to turn it down. The proposed Farming 2050 by Eric Schmidt and our universities, it's already failed. It's failed and failed and failed. You're farming your own capital when you do this. You must not farm capital. You must farm for profit, and you must farm to create nutrient-dense, affordable food. You must support your community. You must have real good wages for yourself, for your employees, and the more people you can employ on the farm, the more layers of income that you can get, and the more people that are working there, the better, because we don't do enough with our land. And I guess probably my reason for being involved is just the shock that every bit of government policy says, well, we're going to reduce how much of this we're going to reduce our way down to a clean environment. Never. It doesn't exist in science.
They got it back to front, really, isn't it? They want the economy bigger and bigger and bigger, and yet the farming smaller and smaller. It'd be quite good to flip it over again the other way, more farming or more productivity in the farming, but not this exponential growth in the economy. Get the real things sorted.
Yeah, I mean, you take those cost benefits of if people are eating healthy again. Gee, next thing, the health thing's not a problem anymore. And if your health's not a problem, then you can work. If you're getting good wages, well, all of the things that are sad that we don't want to read about in the paper, all of the violence, domestic violence, when things go really, really wrong for people, all of those sad stories, they become less and less. We must remember that we were a country that was one of the only countries that was 100% employment way back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. We were the envy of the world, and that was because we exported 2 times much more than what we imported, and we duffed it, you know, and we've got to fix that. We've got to focus on that. You know, we won't do it with free trade. We'll only do it with fair trade. We'll only do it with regenerative agriculture.
Anyways, I think that's going to be the stream for tonight. It's been a very, very successful stream. No issues like last time. But if you're still watching, which we have about 20 viewers still, it's been concurrent, and our top viewers was about 40 something. At one time, which is awesome. But before you go, just make sure that you go and follow Sue Gray's personal Facebook page by just searching Sue Gray on Facebook. She supplies a lot of informative updates. But most importantly, you need to follow Michael K. His Facebook page. Just type it in Facebook. It's called Michael K at NZODP Otaki, which stands for NZ Outdoors Party Otaki. It was a pleasure to have you here, Sue Gray, and thanks very much for joining the live stream to just experience it with us and have a good conversation. We've been a bit over time, but that's good. But the most important thing is that we got some questions and whatnot. But make sure that you follow us every Tuesday. We will be live streaming at 6:00 p.m. But maybe in future we might go a little bit lower. But at this current time, it is 6:00 p.m. every Tuesday until further notice. So keep that in your what do you want to call it, calendar or notes. So make sure you set a reminder and follow on Facebook. And lastly, just a special thanks to ourselves, thisquality. This is our first time that we've actually live streamed, and it's very difficult to learn this stuff, but we eventually learned it, and we're sponsoring this whole live stream to make sure it happens. And if you want to keep these live streams going, make sure that you support all of us, especially go to thisquality.com, and also follow the NZ Outdoors Party page, and also lastly the Michael K NZ Outdoors Party Otaki Electorate page, and Sue Gray most importantly. And anyways, you'll see us here on Tuesday next week. And do you have any comments before we leave?
No, just come back next week, and we'll hopefully have some updates on things, and the more people we have, the merrier. And don't be frightened to ask a question that any question. I'll answer any question.
Oh, Nick Williams says you got my vote.
Awesome. Yeah, great to get some intelligent conversation going, different topics, diversity. The more we can engage with people, the better. It's fantastic. And well done, guys, for setting all this up. It's absolutely brilliant. And thank you for inviting me.
No problem. And it was a pleasure to have you on the stream, Sue. And last comment before we go, Aaron Bradley Jones said, "Great job, guys," with a smiley face. Awesome. Yeah. So we're going to end off this stream. Hope you all enjoyed it. Have a good night. Sit back and relax. And remember to follow us on all of our socials and links that we supply in the live stream description. And we'll see you here on Tuesday next week.
Awesome.
Bye.